The spectral zone. I worked for a fairly large cargo ship liner, but the company forced me to sign non-disclosure agreements to keep the name private, a clear indication of their desperate attempts to cover up the following incidents. However, the events that transpired during my time aboard the vessel cannot be silenced, for they haunt my every waking moment. It started routinely enough, with our regular voyage across the vast expanse of the open sea, a route familiar to many of our seasoned veterans. The ship, a behemoth of steel and machinery, plowed through the waves, carrying precious cargo to far-flung destinations across the globe. The crew, a diverse mix of seafarers, merchants, and technicians, went about their duties with disciplined efficiency. I was a technician, and everything looked as if it was going to be a smooth trip. But little did I know how wrong I was. As we ventured further into uncharted waters, strange occurrences began to unravel the illusion of normalcy. Whispers passed among the crew, their hushed tones laden with trepidation and disbelief. Murmurs of ghostly apparitions and inexplicable phenomena became a constant topic of discussion during night watches, shared in fearful secrecy among the crew. I, too, had been a part of a few of these discussions. One moonlit night, as I stood on the deck, the air grew heavy with an eerie stillness. The sea, usually turbulent and restless, turned tranquil almost suddenly, its surface reflecting the moon's ethereal glow. It was as if nature itself held its breath, anticipating an otherworldly presence. That's when I saw it, a faint shimmering light, flickering just below the water's surface. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of the imagination, a play of moonbeams on the waves. But the light persisted, growing stronger and more pronounced, beckoning me toward its enigmatic source. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and dread, I leaned over the railing, peering into the depths. What I witnessed defied all reason, a myriad of luminescent creatures, their bodies glowing with an otherworldly radiance, swirled and danced in the inky blackness. Their forms were alien, unlike anything documented in the annals of marine biology. Transfixed by this surreal spectacle, I lost track of time. Minutes turned into hours as I and many of the crew remained spellbound by the phosphorescent display unfolding beneath us. It was as if the sea had come alive, revealing a hidden realm teeming with undiscovered wonders. But the wonders soon transformed into something altogether more sinister. The once mesmerizing creatures twisted and contorted, their graceful movements giving way to writhing tendrils and jagged appearances. They burned and twisted, turning into a black powdery madness. A sense of unease washed over me, a primal instinct warning of imminent danger. Abruptly, the creatures turned their attention toward the ship, their glowing eyes fixating on our presence. Suddenly, the sea picked back up as if we were in a vast hurricane, larger than the world had ever seen. A powerful force tugged at the vessel, as if unseen hands sought to drag us down into the dark abyss. Panic gripped the crew as chaos erupted on board. Alarms blared, echoing through the corridors as the ship was thrown into disarray. We struggled to regain control, but our efforts were in vain against the incomprehensible forces at play. Days blended into nights, and the ship became a prison of horrors. The creatures boarded the vessel, and the remaining crew was held captive, praying we wouldn't be the next victims. Strange noises echoed through the halls, growing louder with each passing moment. Crew members vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of their fate. Whispers turned into screams as the ship itself seemed to rebel against its human occupants. Equipment malfunctioned, electrical systems flickered with an eerie blue light, and malevolent shadows moved along the walls. It was as if the vessel had become a playground for entities beyond our comprehension, toying with our fears and tearing at the fabric of our sanity. Each moment before a scream, an abhorrent smell, almost like gasoline, filled the air, followed by a deafening scream of a crewmate. But after each scream, an eerie silence fell. The silence drove many men mad, and some threw themselves overboard. It could only be described as hell without all the fire. The incredibly large waves flung the vessel, as well as us, across the ship, but it seemed the forces would not let the ship sink. The only way I and a group of about 12 others managed to stay away from the monsters was to hide out in the boiler room, bolt the door, and never answer any knocks. The last man to do so was immediately swallowed by one of the entities, almost as if he was burnt to a crisp and then infused into the smoky figure. Fortunately for the rest of us, the figure would only look at us and slam the door promptly. I could only sit and listen as we heard the cries and screams of our fellow crew, and as we heard the expensive cargo plummet into the sea. Suddenly, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, a profound stillness engulfed the ship. The eerie noises ceased, the screams and cries faded into silence, and the turbulent waves calmed. We exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what had transpired. Cautiously, a brave crew member stepped forward and opened the door of the boiler room. To our astonishment, the scene that greeted us was one of surreal tranquility. The corridors were devoid of the malevolent entities that had tormented us for so long. The ship seemed almost untouched, as if the horrors we had endured had been nothing more than a harrowing nightmare. As we cautiously emerged onto the deck, the ship revealed no signs of the chaos and destruction we had experienced. It stood proud and unscathed, as if untouched by the horrors that had unfolded within its corridors. We marveled at this inexplicable phenomenon, struggling to comprehend how such a vast and violent storm had left no trace on the vessel. However, as we ventured closer to the deck, we realized that the crew members who had vanished or fallen victim to the entities remained missing. Their fate was sealed, and their memory would forever haunt the ship that had become their tomb. We mourned their loss, carrying the weight of their absence in our hearts. To our astonishment, when we checked the captain's watch, which had previously spun endlessly, it indicated that only a few hours had passed since we first encountered the enigmatic entities. We had been convinced that weeks, even months, had elapsed during our nightmarish ordeal. The realization sent shivers down our spines, questioning the very fabric of time and space that had been distorted within the confines of the ship. Gathering our waning strength, we set our course toward the port we had been moments away from reaching before the onslaught of supernatural forces. The absence of our cargo lost to the sea along with the terrifying creatures weighed heavily on our minds. The captain, now among us, his gaze filled with determination, led us forward, refusing to let our harrowing journey end in despair. In the end, only the 12 of us in that boiler room remained. The strangest thing of all, though, is that the man on lighthouse duty for the port says he had seen no ships on the horizon, but suddenly our massive vessel showed up in the beam of his light. We were sent to the spectral zone. If you ever see a current moving in the shape of a triangle, stay clear, or you will witness the horrors we had seen that night. The company to this day wants to cover this up and simply told the families of the crew, the media, and those expecting our cargo that the vessel went missing and crashed. The company dismantled the vessel for scrap parts to conceal their lie, and I have been constantly watched by the company because if I reveal these details, I may die. What I have shared with you could get me killed, but I would never wish the spectral zone on my worst enemy. If this post is taken down, I am probably dead. The fading shadows. It was an ordinary evening when I arrived home to an empty house. The silence was unsettling, as if something was amiss. My wife, usually bustling with activity, was nowhere to be found. Anxiety gnawed at my gut as I called out her name, but my voice echoed back, unanswered. I embarked on a frantic search, scouring every room for a trace of her presence. Yet, it was as if she had vanished into thin air. Panic set in, and I reached for my phone to dial the authorities. But just as my fingers brushed the screen, a cold breeze swept through the house, causing the hairs on the back of my neck to stand on end. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements fluid and unnatural. The air grew heavy with an oppressive energy, making it difficult to breathe. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding with fear. In a desperate attempt to make sense of the situation, I retraced my steps, moving cautiously through the rooms. But with each passing moment, the house seemed to shift and contort, as if taunting me with its enigma. Doors creaked open and shut on their own, and whispers echoed through the empty corridors. Determined to find my wife, I ventured into the basement, a place I had always found eerie. The flickering lights cast unsettling shadows across the concrete walls. The temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath in the chilled air. A foreboding presence hung in the dimness, causing my heart to race. The whispers grew louder, their words indecipherable yet filled with a sense of urgency. Shadows writhed and twisted, morphing into grotesque shapes that danced just beyond my line of sight. With trepidation, I stepped forward, peering into the darkness. My wife's name trembled on my lips as I called out to her. But instead of her voice, a haunting echo filled the space, sending shivers down my spine. As I continued my descent into the depths of the basement, the shadows deepened, swallowing the feeble light. Fear tightened its grip around me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette, barely discernible. It flickered like a dying flame, fading in and out of existence. My heart seized with a mixture of hope and terror. I approached, my steps hesitant. The figure reached out, its hand stretching toward me. But as I moved closer, it disintegrated, dissolving into nothingness. My wife's essence, once within my grasp, slipped away like smoke through my fingers. Defeated, I stumbled back, retreating from the enigmatic forces that plagued my home. The shadows continued their macabre dance, mocking me with their inscrutable secrets. I realized then that my wife was lost to me, trapped within the ethereal realm that had engulfed our lives. Days turned into weeks, and the house remained haunted by the memories of her presence. I was left with an ache in my heart and an unrelenting yearning for answers. The whispers persisted, a constant reminder of the unseen forces that governed our reality. In the end, I had no choice but to leave that house behind, for it had become a labyrinth of darkness and despair. I carried the weight of the unknown with me, haunted by the fading shadows of a life that had slipped through my fingers. To this day, I can still hear the echoes of her voice and catch glimpses of her ethereal form in my dreams. The paranormal enigma that engulfed our home remains unsolved, a chilling reminder of the fragile nature of our existence and the inexplicable mysteries that can shatter our sense of reality.